So, Aman, you can start now.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming and inviting me to this meeting. I'm honored to actually speak here at the WIN sessions. I thought probably it would be a good idea to give a little bit of the scenarios as what we have heard and what has really happened. In terms of the general information that is given, is that what has happened in Iran was a popular uprising. This popular uprising was ending the Islamic Republic, and this popular uprising was crushed by the Islamic Republic. And this was the chance for the population to do something real. It was said that the Islamic Republic has suffered in the Middle East and is very weak. And because it's very weak, then something could happen. Two, it was the situation that the Islamic Republic forces were collapsing. Parts of the regime were actually fleeing the Islamic Republic establishment. The whole castle was not only cracking, but it actually was falling down of the Islamic Republic. And the result was the closure of the internet, and as a result, the Islamic Republic crushed everything and everything disappeared. And in addition, we are told that it is the people in Iran who wanted to return back to monarchy. Every person in the street was asking for the return of the monarchy to Iran, and this was the demand of the general population, and therefore the people in Iran have spoken, and the only thing that is remaining is help from outside, and this help should be in the form of the support from the US and Israel in any way they can, and that would wrap up the whole thing. This is the scenario that is generally portrayed, and the situation in Iran, videos, etc., are taken as evidence to show this is the situation. This is far from the truth. The reality in Iran is the Islamic Republic is not weak because of what is being said in the region, because that's one interpretation of the situation of the Islamic Republic, because it's only seen from the regional point of view, and because it is weak, because Israel has won in Gaza, Israel has won in Lebanon, Hezbollah is weak, Islamic Republic has lost its forces in Iraq, Syria is gone. So from that point of view, Islamic Republic is in its weakest position. In all these scenarios, there is nothing about the major problem that the Islamic Republic had, which is not outside, but is inside Iran. That is actually the one which is put aside. So the scenario, if you like, in this case, is shown as if this is the situation of the Islamic Republic from the point of regional forces. Now, in terms of the time where Islamic Republic is even said in the region was not like this, situation in Iran was in turmoil. The major opposition to the Islamic Republic is not external, it's internal. What we saw 3 years ago was the big mass movement in terms of women life freedom, very broad across effectively all the cities, general protests, mass protests, and the Islamic Republic had to go one step back and had to accept the rights of the women in terms of at least one issue, which was with regard to the coverings. The situation after the protests of women life freedom expanded to such an extent that the Islamic Republic had de facto accepted that they cannot hold, they cannot arrest, they cannot actually intervene, because irrespective of all of the propaganda, women in Iran started recognizing that this is their win, and therefore situation in terms of the presence of women, in terms of how they actually dressed in the streets, changed completely. It was not possible for the Islamic Republic to do anything about it. De facto, it accepted it, because it knew at the background, should a further attempt be taken in terms of pushing this half of the society at least. It's not just that half, but the whole society is standing against it, and therefore they had to accept defeat and effectively, de facto, as I said, accept that you cannot arrest a woman because of the way they dressed in the streets. And this is common in Iran and has been so for the past 3 years. The situation with economy and obviously the protests in Iran did not cease. It continued. Then we had the 12-day war. The 12-day war started. With the 12-day war, it was the idea that by killing some of the heads of the military and some of the authorities in Iran, the people in Iran would rise. The propaganda at the time was people just come onto the street, and the supporters of the right-wing opposition to Iran, they not only stood side by side by this attack, but they said this should continue. They were quite calling, all of them were calling, from the monarchists right to parts of the so-called left. They were all in favor of anything they called weakness of the Islamic Republic, and this was sought by bombardments. That during that 12-day war, this was the slogan of the monarchists. The son of the previous Shah had gone to Israel, and they were all talking, Mujahideens, as I said, part of the left. They were all saying that the way to defeat the Islamic Republic is by the continuation of the bombardment. And they were calling this as a protest. The same forces then later on said that it is the people in Iran who have rallied around the flag, which was again untrue. It wasn't the case that they rallied against around the flag, but the other way around. They actually said, we do not want a situation like what we had in Iraq, situation like what has happened in Syria, or another way in Libya. We don't want that to happen to our country. We are actually defending the civil society. And this protest meant that all of the right-wing propaganda effectively showed its failure and lack of support across Iran. During that, post that 12-day war, the Islamic Republic tried to concentrate on the idea of nationalism, protection of Iran, and continuously they tried to crush any protest against this. This did not take any more than a few weeks before the protests in Iran started again. A variety of protests. In every month, we had at least something in the region of 50 to 60 protest actions, whether they were strikes, whether they were protests in different places, different groups of the society, teachers, nurses, universities, writers, variety of people, as well as I said, protests in workplaces, suddenly restarted again and pushed back the Islamic Republic. And the protests were asking for an end to this situation of lack of insecurity, calling for freedom, calling for equality, and this grew. As this protest grew, we had a situation of what happened on 27th of December, when on 27th of December of this year, some of the merchants, and these are not just necessarily big merchants, people who actually were buying and selling, they said with the fall of the national currency, with the devaluation of it being so continuous and being so unpredictable, they were not able to even deal with what they could do. And the situation economically in Iran, especially with the extension of the economic embargo, was the excuse that the Islamic Republic had taken, that the situation in Iran is bad because of the economic embargoes, and therefore they cannot do anything about it. The prices were growing up daily. And when I say the prices are going up daily, the extent of the increase in everyday needs has grown to such an extent that many families were thinking about situations where the 3 meal a day became 1 day a meal. The 1 day a meal became even much more meager. It was impossible for many to actually live. And there were protests against the situation in terms of demands for increase of the wages and ending to the scenario that we are facing with regard to the uncertainty. And when on 27th of December, this protest took place in one of the markets in Tehran, soon as that took place, it was like setting a match to an existing barrel of grenades. Soon it spread. The protest against the hardship, protest against unemployment, lack of security spread across Iran. The Islamic Republic immediate response was to go and talk to some of those merchants and try to actually calm the situation, and they provided some benefits to them in order to stop the whole thing. The slogans throughout the society was that it is not the merchants. Some of them are already benefiting from the situation of the trade in Iran. And there are lots of authorities and parts of the society which are even benefiting of this economic embargo. And this is not acceptable to the majority of the people. In the months just after November especially, we had protest actions across the oil and petrochemical industries and variety of other industries across Iran. What happened was, when this protest started, the Islamic Republic tried to stop the 27th of December, but couldn't actually hold it back. Protests continued. Protests of the petrochemicals continued. The garage and other places, we saw variety of workplaces. We had leaflets and statements made by different sections of the society, the universities, across different, as I said, workplaces, and even spreading across the nurses, teachers, and transport workers. They all started producing statements in support of the general protest that is taking place in Iran against the economic hardship. And this protest continued for about 10 days, and it was spreading faster and faster. There was protest inside the steel factory in Ahvaz, and what immediately the Islamic Republic said is that we will actually honor improvement and giving in to all the demands of those workers. They started talking to some of the petrochemicals, trying to see if they can actually make that to come to an end. And at the same time, we had other protests taking place continuously, and the protests were gathering momentum. This was, after so many years, one of the major protests that it was so massive on one hand, and it was showing that there is clear support from a variety of workforce establishments, and different parts of the society were producing statements in support of the mass protest against the economic hardship and for improvement in life. And this was growing, and there were demands against the downfall of the dictatorship, asking for changes in the society, and the replacement of it with the direct elective representatives of people in form of councils. This was growing. After 10 days, the son of the previous Shah, Pahlavi, produced a statement. He said that now is the time. Come on out, as if people weren't coming out. Come out and stand up against the Islamic Republic, and this is the time. So it's 10 days gone, then this statement comes out. And the streets are supposed to give slogans in support of the return of monarchy. Now, this is something which is very important because it changed everything. On one hand, they started calling up for an immediate action, and their immediate action is not something only by this part of the right-wing opposition. Mujahideen were in the same place. There were a few other parts, some of the nationalists in Kurdistan. They formed what they called the Army of National Army of the Kurd. There were some groups in Balochistan, and these, if you like, religious and nationalist sections, they started saying that we are going to act something which is direct attempt against the Islamic Republic. This was a changing situation. It wasn't the case of coming and giving slogans. They had openly written variety of propaganda leaflets. They said, if there is a slogan, it should be long live Reza Pahlavi. There shouldn't be anything else. There were documents produced similarly by Mujahideen and other nationalists, and they were saying that if anybody starts doing anything, if anybody asks for anything else, use your knives, use your weapons, whatever you have, and hush them up. This changed the scenario. They started militarizing this. The situation was not that the protests suddenly became radical. It wasn't that. It wasn't the case that there was a degree of militancy suddenly coming up into it. It was a direct attempt against this. We had Pompeo. Pompeo wrote a tweet. Pompeo is the ex-head of the CIA and one of the advisors to the establishment in the US, clearly said, well done to people of Iran, and don't worry, walk along, as there are Mossad, the secret agency in Israel. Mossad people are among you and walking alongside with you as well. Clear indication. Israel said, we're following the situation, minute by minute. People of Iran, carry on. We are there to support you. And the whole scenario was changed. These groups tried to actually do something different. And this thing that they wanted different was what they called collapse of the Islamic Republic. Now, there is a huge difference between what the population was asking for, what was taking place, which was not collapse or meltdown of the Islamic Republic, but they were calling for overthrow of the Islamic Republic with an alternative. And the alternative was direct representation and the councils running every place. They acted against it, and the propaganda machine across the official media throughout the West effectively was the voice for this. And the voice for this was, if there were 2 people, 10 people, whatever number, in any place, all of the cameras were on them, and they were showing as if monarchies have taken over and everybody wants this monarchy. 2, all of the statements of any part which was organized in the society was acting and was calling up for something different. In the universities and in everywhere else, the slogans were neither monarchy, an inheritance, and nor leadership, which refers to Khamenei, but we want equality and freedom. This was the slogan which was in the society. They were saying, we don't want any dictatorship of any shape, whether with some sort of a crown or whether it has got the Islamic headwear. This was a major thing that was going across Iran. And it was a continuation of a mass movement that was building itself, and it was moving forward, and they were pushing the Islamic Republic back. With the change of the scenario, with this action of trying to make it very much more immediate and calling for collapse, effectively what they were calling was not the collapse of the Islamic Republic, they were calling for the collapse of the society. We all know that Islamic Republic, even if they kill Khamenei, even if they take him out like what they did in Venezuela, it's not as if the Islamic Republic would melt down. It would mean that all a variety of its armed forces would actually be in the streets. And similarly, you have, on the other hand, those who are being supported by the religious or, if you like, nationalists of different sections of the society in Iran. It was going to be like a civil war. It was going to be like a scenario we had, probably more like that of Syria and Libya to some extent. These were the scenarios which was going to take place. So soon as that happened, immediately we all saw a drop in the mass protest, and the Islamic Republic, obviously with the help of its allies, shut down the internet, completely closed down the internet, broke down all of the links that was produced there, and they started going on under the banner of fighting against those who are fighting against us. When you look at the numbers of those killed, the Islamic Republic says there are several hundred, and out of these several hundred, half of them are members of the Islamic forces. And it had the excuse. It went on a rampage. We all knew that there will be a rampage by the Islamic Republic. But this rampage was intended with one purpose, and that was to push the people back. What I'm trying to say is the people in Iran were caught between a rock and if you like, a cliff and a hard pole. On one hand, you had the Islamic Republic. On the other hand, you had all of the forces of Mossad, US, etc., the right wing, and they were both effectively working to the same aim. And the aim was to push people back out from the protests that they were carrying out. And we expected, obviously, the Islamic Republic to go on a rampage. It was something that they would have done because they called it existential situation. And at the same time, these forces tried to go as much as they could to actually force some sort of a collapse of the society. And with the attacks of the Islamic Republic, effectively they managed to stop what was taking place, and a mass protest suddenly changed. Just to give you a few examples, 3 years ago, for example, we had the protest which was taking place on women life freedom. 2 years before that, we had other sets of protests. Every 2-3 years, we've had many protests. Whereas in this one, suddenly we saw ambulances being set on fire, buses set on fire, cars set on fire. The situation was just suddenly changed. It was a completely different situation. And everybody knew, anybody who was in Iran knew that this is actually being hijacked in a different way. And this hijacking was something that nobody was going to accept. And the Islamic Republic has now claimed, or is claiming, that all the protest actions were part of the propaganda and set up by CIA and Mossad. It was clearly said that even the monarchists were saying, we're waiting for US to attack. We're waiting for Trump to do something. And the idea is attack on the people in Iran. It's not the case that they would be, even with the 12-day war, we saw the same thing. It's not attack against some of the authorities, though they kill some of them, but effectively it's attacking against the people and pushing them back. And this is exactly what has happened so far. So what is our positions, if you like, in case at the moment as it is going through? A, we want a complete cessation of all of the killings, immediate. We want a complete cessation of anything that wants to actually change the society and collapse and break down the whole fabric of the society. Continuation of the protests as they were in terms of forcing the Islamic Republic to go back, and the Islamic Republic has been trying to actually take back some of its propaganda on one hand, but at the same time is trying to allow certain economic benefits. Two, and last, if you like, is to make sure that these protests continue, and the mass protests, as they were doing, for an overthrow of the Islamic Republic. Complete overthrow. Not a meltdown or collapse that would actually make Iran to something which is not just a civil war, but it would be something which would be a lot worse and hideous compared to even what we saw in Syria or what we saw in Libya. And this is what we've been pushing, and that's what is happening in the society at the moment. It has forced a setback on the mass protests. This is obvious. Everybody knows that. The numbers that they say are killed, they're trying to portray it higher and higher as they can. Part of it, Islamic Republic, part of it is the typical official media. They're trying to show the number of people who have been killed. There have been also reports that they say it's getting close to 60,000, 80,000. They're trying to imitate it as if it's the same thing that's happened in Gaza. These are nonsensical. It is the Islamic Republic is not in that position to carry out what they did 30 or 40 years ago. They're not in that position. They do know it, and they do recognize that the protest in Iran this time is very different, and the growth of it and the consciousness is much higher. It's not possible for the Islamic Republic to go back to what it did a year and a half after the uprising in 1979. This is not the position of Islamic Republic. Islamic Republic is weak in front of people. It's not the case that the position of the Islamic Republic is something that it can carry out what it could do. That's why it's on a back foot. Propaganda, obviously, they carry out. This situation, this inaction of the right wing, an action which is supported by Israel and US, is one intention only: to push people back. They could not do it in terms of military options, and 12-day war showed it. They do know that there is no popular support for this right-wing approach in Iran, so the alternative is now this alternative. And this is the situation we are in. There are lots of caveats in here, obviously, and lots of other issues which I'm sure could be talked about, but I don't want to go over my time limit because I may be talking about things that probably other comrades would like to comment on first. So if I could stop here, maybe, Finn, and then let other comrades speak, and if there was need, then I come back and try to explain a few more things.
Of course. Thank you very much, Aman. There's a very informative, very, very interesting opening contribution, and it will certainly stimulate a lot of questions and remarks.